Democratic state lawmaker Morgan Carroll announced her bid for Congress in the 6th Congressional District this week, taking on incumbent Republican Mike Coffman. Meanwhile, State Senator Lucia Guzman will replace Carroll as Democratic Senate Minority Leader when all that pairs out next week. Patty, I think this is an intriguing matchup. I mean, Morgan Carroll has not run on a statewide or congressional level, but she's a seasoned Colorado politician. She certainly creates a different situation for Mike Coffman, but Mike Coffman is no slouch. He has fought in some bitterly fought elections these last few years. What do you think?
Well, I think it would have been, Morgan Carroll might have wanted to run last time, just because every election, Coffman gets more and more comfortable in this new redistricted place. So he's now like Ed Perlmutter in the other party, but in the sense that it's pretty much his. Although Morgan Carroll, as we've seen in the legislature, is a good fighter. She is a good speaker. She certainly speaks her mind and talks up, and I think she'll be a good debater with him. She'll liven up the election a lot. Will she bring in the amount of money that's going to be necessary? Depends really on how hard the Democrats want this seat. We certainly are seeing around the country that they're saying this is going to be one of the big fights. I think now that she's stepped up as early as she has, it means we aren't going to really see any other Democrats jump in. It's going to be hers to win. Maybe more likely hers to lose. She's got an uphill battle, but it's going to be an interesting one. Glad she's staying in the Colorado legislature, and I'm also really glad Lucia Guzman is a great senator, and she'll be a good minority leader.
David, what do you put the odds on for Morgan Carroll's chances? I mean, there may be a significant Democratic ticket with Hillary Clinton that may help or hinder Morgan Carroll, but she's going up against Mike Coffman, who, up there with Ed Perlmutter, is one of the more voracious campaigners out there in Colorado politics. What do you think?
Well, I think that the standard national political conventional wisdom is that this race is now a toss-up. She is a formidable candidate. Her political skills are not only the ones she's developed in her own life, but her political DNA is about as powerful as you can have in Colorado. In the 1940s show, we were talking about Denver District Attorney Carroll, that the Carroll family has been involved as usually winning candidates in Colorado politics, since the 1930s. So she's going to be very strong. And Mike Coffman also works very hard. So I think you can look at this nationally as a national A+ versus A+ marquee matchup of really excellent candidates on both sides. And I'd certainly agree with Patty that choosing Lucia Guzman as the Democratic minority leader was a great choice. She is certainly solidly, ardently on the the left wing of her party, but also a person who really works well with Republicans. The Colorado Statesman did an article a few weeks ago about her good relationship and bipartisan work with Senator John Cook from Greeley, who's a very conservative guy, but they found ways they could work together on constructive, common sense solutions.
Penn, obviously, Morgan comes with a long list of successes on the state legislature level. But running for Congress is a whole different banana, especially CD6, which is going to get millions of dollars of national money put into it. How do you feel Morgan Carroll will fare?
Well, you're right. There'll be millions of dollars put in this race. And my initial take is that Morgan Carroll will fare far better than Andrew Romanoff did, simply because she lives in the district and she's from there. And I think that was Andrew's greatest shortcoming. And frankly, some of the prior races Andrew had picked had created some problems for him within what should have been a Democratic base. Morgan doesn't suffer from any of that. But I also think that Democrats in general are very foolish if they underestimate how hard Mike Coffman is willing to work. And I suspect he may be more popular in the district than people give him credit for. He's a smart guy. He's a good campaigner. He has sort of been on, I think, in the minds of some on the right fringe on a few issues, and how that gets woven into Morgan's campaign is going to be interesting and important. But, that's sort of home base for her. And she wasn't districted into it. She's been there, and unlike even Mike. So I think it's going to be an interesting race. We'll have to see what Emily's List and some of the other national organizations that support women do. They'll probably dump a lot of money into this race, particularly in light of who may be the Democratic presidential nominee. So Morgan is going to be formidable, and she knows how to run a good ground game too. So it's going to be fascinating to watch.
Ed, was this the expected run? I mean, you're kind of our man on the scene at the Capitol. As you were watching this last legislative session go, is this kind of where everyone thought things were going to be happening?
Well, actually, the funny thing is, for years, a lot of people at the Capitol expected Morgan Carroll was going to run for the open AG seat, the open Attorney General seat in 2014, and were quite surprised when she passed on it and let Don Quick be the Democratic nominee. But I mean, Carroll obviously is someone who's risen up through her party. She's someone who's very ambitious. It's not a huge surprise to see that this is how it's coming around. I think one of the real factors in this race that nobody's talking about is going to be who are the Republicans going to get to run for the race that Mike Coffman passed on, the Senate race? If they can get a top-tier candidate, and mind you, their top candidate, Coffman, is already out of that race, but you know, I still argue that if they could get someone like a George Brockler to run for it and really put some heat on Bennett, that will probably make it harder for Carroll because more of the money will be flowing toward Michael Bennett and defending that seat. However, if they can't find a top-tier candidate, suddenly people can back away from that race. They can look at this one. They can put more money into it. And all of a sudden, it's a free-for-all. I agree with everyone. Mike Coffman is going to be a tough candidate to beat. I think that the scare that he encountered in 2012 with Joe McCloskey, which nobody thought was going to be a race, caused him to get to know his district better in 2014. And I think he's a little more cemented, especially with his going out and going to bat for the Aurora, for the Aurora VA, not for the VA, but for constructing the hospital. But it'll be interesting to see how all the chips fall and where this falls in line of who's going to contribute.
That's a good point.